Welcome back to Cincinnati Connection. Through her new book, Navigating Courage, A Black Woman's Journey in Athletics and Academia, Robin Martin details not only her trials and tribulations, but successes and triumphs. She takes us on a leadership journey, and not only that, she creates a pathway for us for those who dare to follow along on the same path to success. I'm very happy to have her here. She joins us this morning with more on not only her book, but her life. We're excited to talk to her. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited because, when you read the book and it's just kind of seeing some of your journey, being the first woman in your college, in your family to graduate college, a first-time college graduate. Some of the success that you've had. Can you just kind of give us a rundown of just all of the things you've done? Because let me tell you, her LinkedIn profile is amazing.
Well, thank you. So I grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. I was the first person in my family to attend and graduate from college. I went to the University of New Orleans, played basketball there, stayed in New Orleans for about 13 years, became the first female African-American athletic director at Dillard University, at Holy Names University, coached for several years, and then decided I wanted to be a university president at some point. I was recruited to the University of Cincinnati in 2007 after leaving New Orleans, and I was the senior associate athletic director at UC for 5 years, then became the associate provost, a faculty member, and now I have my own company called Leading Beyond the Post.
You know what? As you mentioned this amazing journey, what I really love about it is these are not just titles that you've had, but the experiences that you've had, you've detailed in this book as you make this journey to where you are now, right?
Yes, I do. And part of the book, I call it Navigating Courage. I know part of this was also talking about diversity and inclusion. If you think about the word navigating courage, if you look at the word courage actually has rage in it. I talk a lot about leadership and what I've learned about leadership. And what I say is I'm not quite sure that we can be courageous without having some level of rage or outrage for the status quo. And how do we as leaders start to show up both in our courage and our rage to make the difference that we really want to see? And so part of this book was a remembrance of myself, about the lessons that I've learned about myself and about leading, but also about institutions and how do we all lead better to see the change that we really want to see.
So, what are some of the things that we can take away from this book as far as when it comes to leadership, some of the institutions that maybe promoted you? Well, let me switch this around. Which was the position, out of all the positions, which position was the one that said, I have to start kind of, maybe writing this book because we have to do this better?
Yeah, I think it was when I was in the provost office at the University of Cincinnati.
Okay.
What I say in the book is that I was the carrier of stories, whether I was the associate athletic director and saw a lot of things happen inside the university from this high-level administrative position, whether people came to me as a confidant, and my own personal journey of struggle, being in predominantly white spaces and leading as a strong Black woman. And I saw not only my story, but how my story was connected to everyone else's stories inside the institution. And sometimes when we think about these one-off kind of incidences, we think that that's just that incident. We really don't have a chance to really look at the institutional impact that diversity and inclusion, or exclusion, quite frankly, or systems of racism, sexism, has both on the individuals and the collective community. And so this book actually was my calling point for all of us to say how we all play a part in both healing and the destruction of institutions, right?
And so, I can just tell you this. Diversity and inclusion are two words that I think are being thrown around a lot.
A lot.
They're being thrown a lot. We're seeing them everywhere. We're seeing awards being given out in diversity and inclusion. And we have companies that are trying to become more diverse and become more inclusive. But how does one truly become diverse and inclusive when it comes to really having an impact on the way that their company runs, their business runs, the way their university runs?
Yes. So it's interesting because I actually rail against diversity and inclusion. I have those same thoughts, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's like, all right,
I actually call it in the book, I call it fake diversity, right? I say in my trainings that diversity is a reality. I don't care where you are, who you are. Diversity is a reality. The inclusion piece is the difference that we have.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes most diversity and inclusion trainings go a little something like this. They walk in and talk about structural racism that we all know exists, but really don't equip people with the tools to really deal with it. So everyone walks into the room, we say, this is what structural racism looks like. Here are all the check marks, and everyone goes, and it's a certain group's people's faults, And then that group of people, white people in particular, leave those trainings and go, I'm just trying to lead my life and do the right thing.
Yeah.
People that have been impacted by it go, yep, that's what it feels like every single day. And we really don't give anyone any tools.
Yeah.
But I believe the next step in all this is really about inclusive leadership, that we really should be talking about what is our individual responsibility. I say that everyone has privilege, everyone has power, and therefore everyone has responsibility. And I believe it's a leadership imperative more so than it is around just having these simple words around diversity and inclusion. So in my inclusive leadership course, I ask people to consider their own individual role.
Yeah.
We don't do that very often. I actually say in the book, there were times when I was complicit in the way in which I was a part of the system. Now, how many of us get up every single day and think about how we are complicit in the system itself? And so I think people leave diversity and inclusion trainings going, did you hear what they talked about? Did you hear what they said about John? And then John goes, did you hear about what they said about Susie? And no one is really focusing on their role responsibility in getting better.
Well, you just said a lot there. A lot there. I mean, I want people to be able to pick up this book, but we talked about you as being the only sometimes in the room, of course, being a strong Black woman and leading a room full of people who do not look like you or did not come from the same background as you. But what about being a woman in this journey, especially in this era that we have right now of Me Too, this era where we have women that are saying time's up. As a woman taking this journey, have you seen any difficulties with that as well?
There are always difficulties. I use one of the principles I use in the book. I call it the Esther principle.
Okay.
And I don't know if you know the story of Esther, but there are times Esther was a Jew. She married a king, and then the Jews were threatened to be killed. And Mordecai came to Esther and said, we need you to speak up. But she also knew that if she did speak up, then she could also be killed herself, and she was fearful. And Mordecai says to her that God will send someone to send the Jews, but what if you were sent for such a time as this? And oftentimes what I say is that's the guiding principle that I have, that I say in the book, there are consequences both for our actions and inactions. The question is, what if, being the only one in the room, whether it's a woman, whether it's an African-American woman, whatever that only is, we need to consider and to ask ourselves, what if we were in that royal position for such a time as this? And oftentimes we are, and that is really about community. That's not about our individual selves. But oftentimes we're caught up in these kind of, what are the consequences for it? And I'd say that there are consequences both for our actions and inactions. We have to be able to choose and say, what are our guiding principles to help us move forward? And somehow we've got into this kind of us and others kind of paradigm. And what I would say is that we're all together, that we are interconnected, that my story is not just my story. My story is connected to all of the other stories that happen inside the institution. And the quicker we get there, then the more we can lead in a holistic way.
Well, you know what? I want people to be able to pick up the book. If you're looking for it, this is it right here. I mean, where can we find this?
So you can find it on my website, leadingbeyondthepost.com.
Okay.
I actually have, in 2019, a new iteration of the book, Inside of a Journey. I want people to actually come along with this journey and navigate their own courage and find their own leadership path to change.
All right, I recommend this one, honestly. If I can have I'm not Oprah, but we have a Sharice Books Club. This is on it right here.
Well, we have one tonight, so thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, for joining us. I mean, you always give wonderful advice, and I mean, if people want to get in touch with you because she's a phenomenal speaker as well, what can we find you there?
Leadingbeyondthepost.com is my company. You can find the book and all the information about the company there.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you so very much for having me.
We'll be right back.